Have you ever found yourself getting stuck in your head late at night in bed, and then all of a sudden you realize that it's 2 in the morning and you just pulled all of your eyelashes out, or you have a new bald patch on your head? Has this ever happened to you? If this does sound like something you've experienced before, maybe this has been followed by you asking yourself a series of questions like, why do I do this to myself? And what's wrong with me? And how am I going to hide this tomorrow? If you've ever found yourself in this situation or one like it, this is an example of anxiety. And it's likely that anxiety is a trigger for your trichotillomania. Now, it is possible to have more than one trigger, but for this video today, we're just going to be talking about anxiety, how this relates to trichotillomania, and then 3 things that you can do to kind of help with this situation. So before we go on, I just want to say hello and thank you for joining me today. Thank you for being here today. My name is Katarina, and for those of you who are new here, I'm just going to take a minute to explain a little bit about myself, give you some background details really quick before we jump into the video. I'm a former lash puller, and now I'm trick-free, and I've been trick-free for about 9 years. I'm a personal coach for babes with trick who want to rise and overcome, because it can be overcome no matter how many times we've heard that it can't be overcome, and I am an example of that. Now, not everybody wants to overcome trick, and I totally respect that, and I totally honor where you are in your journey. So if you're really struggling with trick right now and you'd like some one-on-one support and guidance with someone who really understands trichotillomania and has been through it, but more importantly has overcome it and has learned a thing or two in the process, then feel free to reach out to me for a free consultation, and I'm always happy to help. It's really important for me to get this message out there because so many tricksters are going through this and they have no one to talk to, and they're just suffering in silence. And I know that was the case for me, and I'm sure it's like this for many of you or many other tricksters out there who may find this video. So with all that said, let's get into the video for today. To understand the relationship between trick and anxiety, we first have to understand what each of these 2 things are without the labels. So in the world, we put labels on many things, and this is just to make it easier for our minds to comprehend something that might otherwise be difficult to understand in some cases. So essentially, we want to take a look at what both trichotillomania and anxiety are, as if we had taken those names away from the equation and just broken it down, take a deeper look at each of these things to see what they are exactly and why they show up together, or why anxiety might be a trigger for trick. Now, when I say the relationship between trichotillomania and anxiety, what I mean is, how do they affect one another? Why do we pull when we're anxious? Or, how anxiety affects trick, how trick affects anxiety, how this can sometimes manifest as some sort of vicious cycle. We pull when we're anxious, and then our pulling makes us anxious. So it's like this vicious loop that keeps you going around in circles and circles. Right? So essentially that's what I mean by the relationship when I'm talking about the relationship. It's just those kinds of things. Okay, so first, what is trichotillomania? So I don't know if you watch any of my other videos, but I talk about this in some of my other content, especially on Instagram. You'll find me talking a lot about this on Instagram. But if you're new to me in general, then I'd like to explain a little bit about my perspective on trichotillomania, and this may be a new perspective for you, but maybe it's one that you need to hear, or maybe it's a perspective that's gonna kind of spark something new for you and change things for you. Okay, so essentially, trich is, long story short, trich is a symptom. So a lot of people in the community, in the trich community, they focus a lot on the pulling and trying to stop the pulling and trying to control the pulling. And this is kind of like a backwards approach, because the pulling is just a symptom of something else. And if you're just trying to treat the symptoms, usually the symptoms will come back if we're not treating the root cause of something, you know? That's like saying, maybe if you have a cold, this is kind of a silly example, but if you have a cold, a cough would be one of the symptoms. So just treating the cough alone isn't going to be able to get rid of the cold. And the cough would just keep coming back until the cold is completely gone. Right? So this is a similar concept with trich. I know they're two totally different things, but this is just to kind of paint a picture of what I mean by the symptom, and how focusing on the symptom is, in the long run, not going to be an effective approach. Okay? Because a lot of people try to treat the symptom, they try to treat the pulling with willpower. And yes, willpower can work on many occasions. However, for trichotillomania, for willpower to work, there needs to be kind of like this succession of events, or like this kind of like, how do I want to say this? There needs to be like a process that happens before willpower will be effective or successful. Essentially, trich is not the problem, it's just a symptom of a problem. And when I say problem, I'm not meaning that there is anything inherently wrong with you, because there's nothing wrong with you, right? I'm just saying that the problem is like some sort of imbalance somewhere in your system, somewhere in your body, in your mind, in your life, somewhere in the whole package. There's some kind of imbalance in place. Okay, and so this imbalance is the root. We want to try and find the imbalance that's happening in your life, in your mind, in your body. And that's, I mean, this is for a whole nother video, but essentially that is the root. And so that's why focusing on the symptom is not going to heal this root that we have happening here. And everybody's root, or the cause of trichotillomania, is going to be very different. There's going to be some similarities, but overall, there's going to be a lot of differences, and that's why trichotillomania shows up very differently from person to person. There are a lot of similarities, but there are also a lot of differences, and that's why it's really important for us to kind of embrace our differences and to realize that everybody is different than we are, and we are different than everybody, even though we can share some similarities between us and our experiences with trichotillomania. It's important to realize that my experience is going to be very different than yours, and vice versa. But there is some common ground here, and that's why you're going to be able to learn things from my experience anyway. So, for example, one of the similarities that you might experience are the triggers. Maybe one of your triggers is anxiety, for example, and maybe if you have ever met or spoken with somebody else who has had trich or has trich, maybe one of their triggers is also anxiety, and so that's a common ground. That is some similarity between you two. However, what spikes the anxiety in you might be different for how the other person experiences their anxiety, and so that is something that's different. And that's why the approach to healing or curing or anything like that, the approach to essentially overcoming trichotillomania is not a one-size-fits-all approach, and it can't be a quick fix approach. It has to be very specific and personalized to the person. You know, I know that the pulling is uncomfortable, it's not pleasant to live with, and it can cause a lot of a lot of different difficulties in our lives, but if you want to get rid of this for the long term, maybe not get rid of, but just if you want to be able to heal this for the long term, or to just, lessen the symptoms, or if you want to make progress, then it has to be a personalized approach. And oftentimes that means that you're going to have to take a little more time, and it's going to be difficult. It's not going to be an easy process, but you can do it. You can do it. So next, what is anxiety? Again, we want to take away the word anxiety and just look at it for what it is. Essentially, anxiety is caused by an emotion that we all experience in life, some of us more intensely than others, though, and this emotion is fear. So to put it short, anxiety is fear. What could we be afraid of that would be causing this anxiety? Well, that would be fear of the future. If you're constantly worrying about how are you going to pay the bills, or this or that, going to school the next day, having a project due, having to confront somebody that's not easy, that causes a lot of anxiety, things like that. It can also be fear surrounding the past. So perhaps you made a mistake or something like that. You did something that you feel wasn't right, or that you did something wrong, and now you're afraid of what's going to happen as the outcome, or as a result, or as the consequence of your actions. So that can cause a lot of fear as well. Now, social anxiety is a little bit different. It still involves fear, but rather than being rooted in the past, it's mostly rooted in the either in the future. So if you're around people, maybe you're afraid of what they'll do or what they'll say or something like that, or you're afraid of making a mistake or saying the wrong thing and looking like a fool later on. And this kind of fear, though, because it's like a situation that you're currently in. So say you go to a party, or you have a doctor's appointment or something like that, and you feel social anxiety around those things. This is something that's happening in the present. So it's like you're experiencing this anxiety in the present moment about something that could happen very soon, or something like that, like instantly, right? And so this is kind of like future based, but I mean, it's like pretty immediate. Like your anxiety could be brought on really quickly with this. Whereas if we're kind of laying in bed at night thinking about what's going to happen tomorrow or in the future, this is kind of like an anxiety or a fear that we talk ourselves into, if that makes sense. Like, it just happens because we get stuck in these thoughts that just keep popping up. Whereas social anxiety just kind of is, I found it to be kind of like a reaction almost. Yeah, like a reaction to our environment, I guess. Another reason why social anxiety causes fear is because of the lack of control that we have in these situations regarding other people, because we can't control other people, and it's really hard for us to predict what other people are going to do. And so that's another reason why we might experience fear in these situations. So now that we know a little bit better about what trichotillomania and anxiety are, let's explore a little bit of the relationship between them. So you might be asking yourself sometimes, why does the anxiety make me pull, or why do I pull when I'm anxious? I like to refer to trichotillomania as a safety mechanism. You may have heard the term coping mechanism before, and that's also fine. However, I just prefer to use safety mechanism because it's easier for me to use that in my explanations, because safety is a word that we all know and understand very well. So, of course, when we are afraid, our natural instinct is to find safety and security. A long time ago, back in the days of the ancient humans, this concept was very easy to understand. It's like you go out hunting or foraging for food, and say you were threatened by a hungry bear or a hungry lion or something like that. So immediately your bodily responses would kick in, your hormone levels would rise, your adrenaline levels would rise, and all of that Maybe you would be feeling a little bit of fear also, of course, in that situation, but your body would be producing all of this energy, and then you would have to act. So what would happen is you would either fight or you would run away. So fight or flight, right? And then once the threat was gone, once you had either killed the vicious animal or found safety in a shelter or something like that, then your um, hormone levels would lower and your body would go back to its resting state and everything would go back and life would just go on as normal, right? But we don't live like they lived back then. We live in modern society and we are surrounded by stimulants every day. And on top of that, the line between what our mind perceives as fear and what is actually threatening us is a little bit blurry. So we may not be externally threatened in any way, like our life might not be in danger, but we still have these hormones like the adrenaline and, hormone levels are rising. And all of this energy is kind of stuck in our bodies because we don't have the option of running when we feel threatened. Because a lot of what we feel threatened by these days is internally in our minds. So this causes all of the energy from these built up emotions to kind of stay in our body. And so we haven't learned how to release this built up energy, the fear, anger, sadness, all of those kinds of emotions. We're going to be focusing mostly on fear today though, but right, so these emotions are kind of stuck in the body and we aren't able to get back to that resting point like they were back then after like a long run or after a physical battle. So now we're kind of still living with this fear in our bodies, and it's causing us on a deep subconscious level to feel unsafe. And on top of this, humans are more sensitized to the energies and emotions of others now. So on top of you carrying around your own feelings of insecurity and fear and any other kinds of emotions, you're also more susceptible to absorbing the emotions and energies that others are feeling. And sometimes we can take those on and make them our own. And this can really affect our well-being as well. And this is why toxic relationships can also be triggers for us when it comes to trichotillomania. And I won't go too much into toxic relationships now because that's for a different video, but I just wanted to put that out there that our sensitivities to our own emotions, but also to those of the people around us, is a reason why toxic relationships can be a huge factor in trichotillomania. So basically, because we grew up and we live in a modern society, a society which is changing and it is veering in a different direction, but for a long time, and still is today, a society that doesn't allow us to freely express our emotions and to freely kind of release them in a healthy way, it's caused us to not really know how to deal with these emotions or not really know what to do when something happens to us. We kind of just bury it down inside and try to forget about it sometimes, or we just kind of shrug it off, like say, oh, I shouldn't be worrying about that, or I don't know why I'm upset about that. I don't need to be upset about that, or something like that. And we don't allow ourselves to kind of be with that emotion and to learn how to accept it, to accept that it's there, and to be able to release it so that it can leave our body rather than being trapped and trapping this kind of built up, kind of anxious, negative energy inside of us. And so because all of this energy is stored inside of you and didn't have a healthy outlet, that's why your body, my body created a mechanism to help it kind of mimic that feeling of safety. Hence why I call it a safety mechanism. That's why when you pull, you may notice that after you're done pulling, or after you're done getting that one hair out that you were like just fixated on for a long time, you just feel this like this sense of relief, like finally I got it. You feel just relief. You kind of feel safe in that instant, right? Maybe until you've realized what you've done, but you just kind of feel like yes, or just like this release, right? And that's why for some of you, when you're actually pulling, it feels good because it's mimicking that sense of safety, and safety feels good, right? And so that's why some of you maybe if you don't exactly realize it, you might be a little bit like on a subconscious level, you might not want to get rid of the pulling because on some level you do enjoy it because it does bring you that sense of safety. And that's a big sign that you're not ready to let go of the pulling yet, because there's something that's causing you to feel unsafe, and so you're not going to be able to get rid of the pulling unless you feel safe. Pulling and trichotillomania is just one of many safety mechanisms. There are so many different safety mechanisms in the world, and I mean, I could list them all out here. I'm sure you can come up with a list of your own. A safety mechanism is essentially something that we do that our body eventually becomes dependent on. And that's why it's so hard for us to get rid of them, or that's why it's so hard for us to let go of safety mechanisms or coping mechanisms, because our body has depended on that as a way for us to feel safe in some way. So now I'm sure you're wondering, now that you know a little bit more about anxiety and how that relates to trichotillomania, and their relationship together, I'm sure you're wondering how you can help yourself then. And so the absolute shortest answer I can give you is to rediscover what helps you feel safe. What is your safe place? What does safety look like and mean like to you? But to break it down a little bit further and to give you some actionable steps, I've come up with 3 things that you can implement or think about or try to do in your own life to help you get back to that safe space. And I understand that this can be easier said than done, but I promise you that there is a version of you waiting for you, a version of you that feels safe and secure and happy. I promise you that this version of you exists, and that there is a version of you that does feel truly safe and secure and that doesn't need the pulling. But if you're needing some extra guidance and help to kind of discover what will help you to feel safe, then don't hesitate to reach out to me. I would be more than happy to help you work through this. You can find my contact details down in the description. But if you if you're needing something right now, I have a few things that you can journal about to help you gain a little bit of clarity around around what will help you to feel safe. So the first journaling exercise that you can do is just take out a piece of paper. It doesn't need to be in a journal or anything like that. Just take out a piece of paper and write down, I feel truly safe and secure when, and then just start writing it out. Just start free writing and see what comes up. You might want to do this several days in a row, maybe for a week straight, because I know in the beginning it's hard to get the juices flowing. It's hard to kind of like get in the zone. But I promise you, if you do this regularly, you'll be amazed at what kinds of things start to come out. Okay, and the next one is, the last time I felt super safe was, and then just do the same thing, just free write about the last time that you felt really safe. This will help to give you a little bit of clarity on what kinds of things you might be able to implement again in your life that are going to help to bring you back to that place. And then the last thing is you can write down this question: what does the word safe mean to me? So we hear the word safe and we have a general idea of what it means, but what does it specifically mean to you? Remember I said that trichotillomania is like super unique from person to person, and everyone develops safety mechanisms differently because we all feel safe in different ways and we all feel unsafe in different ways. And so it's up to you to kind of come up with your own version of what safety means to you. And this will help to start paint a better picture of what that looks like. And then you'll be able to be guided and directed intuitively to choose to do things that feel safe, or to choose to surround yourself with things that feel safe, or to choose to surround yourself with people that make you feel safe, or anything like that, to make those positive changes in your life that are going to help to align you to that safe space that you can create for yourself in your life. Okay, so the second thing that you can do is to start treating yourself with more kindness. I mean, think about it. If you are having a conversation with somebody and that person is calling you names or is being really disrespectful or just doesn't have your back, do you feel safe with that person? My guess, or I'm willing to bet that the answer is no. You probably don't feel safe with that person, right? So you need to start treating yourself with respect. You need to start being there for yourself, having your back, treating yourself the way that you want to be treated, because the only way that you're going to find true safety is if you start with yourself, okay? Because you're not going to be able to find it in anything around you. I mean, that's when dependencies happen, is when we look for safety outside of ourselves. Maybe we look for safety in another person. We look for safety in food. We look for safety in, I don't know, there's so many things, right? So it has to start with you. You need to be there for yourself. You need to be that safe place that you can go to whenever you're needing it. And you deserve that. You really do. Okay, so this work needs to start on the inside. It needs to start with you. And it's not going to be easy, and it can't happen. I understand that normally it can't happen overnight, right? But you can do it. You can be there for yourself. Okay, so the third thing is to start finding healthy ways to express and to release some of these emotions that are built up inside of you, whether that's fear, sadness, anger. Today we talked a lot about fear, but you just need to start developing ways that you can release these emotions, because by releasing these emotions, it's going to create so much space to let in better emotions. Okay, it's just going to open up so much space to let in newfound sense of safety. So by releasing fear, essentially you're releasing anxiety, and then you're going to be welcoming in safety. And at its core, safety is love. Because if you think about it, love, there can be no fear in love, right? Love is the essence of safety, basically. Think about a newborn baby being held by her mother or something like that. The baby feels so safe because the mom loves her so much. Okay, so that's all I have for you today in this video on the trichotillomania trigger of anxiety. So I hope you found this video helpful or useful in some way. If you did, please like the video or comment down below. I'd love to hear what your experience is with anxiety or with your own triggers with trichotillomania. I'm very curious to hear what's going on with you. Additionally, if you're feeling like working with me is something that you would like to do, then I will also have my contact details in the description. Reach out to me and we can certainly start a conversation together and see if it's a right fit to work together. I also want to let you know that I did create a free ebook, which is all about healing trichotillomania. There are 3 pillars in there. So there's 3 things that I focus on in there, and this is a great place to start if you're wanting to heal, if you're wanting to begin this healing journey. So definitely click the link and check that out if you're interested in that. All right, so I think that's all I have to say. And I just want to wish you a beautiful day, morning, or night, wherever you are in the world. And yeah, I'll see you soon.